So we're gonna do a little recap of the weekend. The weekend was the Olympia here in Las Vegas. It was a very eventful weekend for Dominic and Adam and myself as well, leading to the entire week full of meetings and check-ins, and then finally the shows on Fridays and Saturdays. So to start, let's do a little recap of my own preparation. So Dom, if you want to go over a few things that we assess to make it better to come stronger next year.
So as many people know, Amanda started her competition season this year in May at the New York Pro in Omaha, which that we were very happy with that. Very pleased with both looks and both outcomes. The timing of the show, given that it was in May and then June after that, and I think it was about, I don't know how many months is that, like out from the Olympia, 4 months.
So I did the New York Pro in May, and I did Omaha in June.
And started her prep in like the first week of February for say. So typically, like a good strategic approach was after that show, there was enough time to kind of clean her body out and give her body a break, take a recomposition phase, and then have a full, strong Olympia prep. Now, during that phase, Amanda does have a very fast metabolism. Her food was high, but we did come off of like all androgens. She went back on like all of her BHRT stuff, some growth hormone and insulin.
BHRT is bioidentical hormonal replacement.
Yeah, physiological like
dosage.
Yeah, that would just put her in an optimal range.
But which I think that's unfortunately one of mistakes that we made.
But again, I wouldn't consider it a mistake, because if I had to go back, I'm not just going to leave any athlete on androgens then, which would have been from the last week of January until now. Then that would have ended up having to be, because when she started her prep for this Olympia at 155, 154 pounds. And she stepped on stage in New York and Omaha around 156. So at her stage weight, but not at the body fat that she was. She was at probably more closer to 14 or 15% body fat, opposed to on stage being, single digit. So starting the prep off, opposed to starting the prep going from an off season where she's about 170 pounds, it was a little bit of a different circumstance where she actually had to put back on all of that fullness that was lost. And again, when you take androgens, they increase your muscle cells' ability to uptake glucose, which is glycogen, and protein synthesis. So that's why like the first 2.5, 3 weeks, people will see that initial like weight gain. And that's mostly just because your body's ability to uptake like glycogen. In her case, it was like much more than that. So again, like a normal person, you wouldn't see them stay at their stage weight, staying on TRT. Usually they would still, go up right after a show. So starting the prep off at that place where you have to go ahead and put back on that type of like fullness and tissue again is rough, because once you're really within 8 weeks out of a show, your main thing then at that point is you're pushing conditioning without creating like metabolic adaptations. Amanda's body is different in terms of the way it responds. I will tell you, like, she does have very like good genetics, so that she is capable of growing into a show. Because the first year I ever prepped her, that was kind of like how her body was. She started off like that first prep maybe at like 145 and then got on stage at like 142. This was years ago. So like I knew her body was capable of doing it, but we know that we cannot start a prep off, being under our stage weight.
And I think that unfortunately, after taking a whole year off and putting muscle on, my look for Atlanta last year, for Chicago last year, New York Pro and Omaha Pro were much better than I presented at Olympia, unfortunately. At Olympia, I already knew going towards peak week that I was not at my best. I already knew that my legs had downsized a good amount. I did jump into a new training about 3 months prior to the Olympia with the person overseeing my training, and the person didn't quite understand
What you were doing
what I was
previously.
doing before. I don't think that the person even asked what I was doing in terms of exercise selection, sets, and repetition. I just received a new plan and kind of believed blindly. And it wasn't a good outcome, unfortunately, because nothing has changed given the fact that I was still training very heavily with all the exercise that were given to me. My food was still pretty high, and my body didn't respond at all. And so, for example, my previous training plan with Dominic, I had hack squats. I had pretty heavy compound movements, and then I cut that out completely and went into a new training plan that had mostly hip thrust at the beginning of my training on a leg day, and a lot of single leg isolations, but not really compound movements.
No, and I mean, part of that too is like, part of that was my fault too, because I didn't look at it. I trusted, the programming and the person that was like writing it up at the time.
I just don't know why we
And
even didn't take
I
into
should have,
consideration that this person doesn't know anything about it.
looked at it. I didn't until like she was already into prep because I was contributing it to her being in a health phase. And then after she had been in prep for already 6 weeks, I'm like, all right, like, let me see what this looks like here. And I'm like, there's no, and with training, I tell people this, with training like elite level, like athletes, it's different than somebody that's starting off like a newer competitor because a lot of it has to do with what they were previously doing. And I've actually hired two of the best, like highly recommended people that are known like on social media and that are from like science based and have a lot of experience to do my training. And I had a similar experience too, just because I was used to training with such heavy loads and higher volume that when I switched to this, my body didn't have that type of response because I had been training a certain way at such a high level for so long. So I think like when it comes to training, you have to look at what the person was doing beforehand. I think that that's the most important thing that you got to look at.
Mm-hmm.
But again, like with bodybuilding, you live and you learn through
Definitely.
these kind of experiences. And, that's kind of the beauty of the sport. You take this information, you put it back in the toolbox, and you use it to your advantage going into the next prep.
Yeah. So just a little recap. Some of the things that we learned that will not be, a mistake again next year will be we are going to aim for shows that are a little bit more towards the end of the season.
Towards
so
the Olympia.
Yeah, toward a little bit closer to the Olympia. So we'll technically have, let's say, 2 shows to hit before the Olympia, and try our best to qualify closer to the Olympia so we don't have that gap. Just because my type of body, it would be best to have that strategy. Another thing that we learned as well, especially myself, is that right after a prep, I needed to recomp and be a little bit patient about it. So not go full force into cardio and doing extra reps and going full force in the gym. Also, whoever, Dominic is in charge of my training, but if I ever have somebody to oversee my training, because, let's say Dom and I, because Dom and I, we do things together, right? So Dom agrees with me going and trying something different and trying a new person for training.
Because I have a couple of clients that I have people that take over their training aspects that I trust, because there are like 2 or 3 people that are great with that. So then I allow them to do that.
Yeah, and if we do that, we will study it together and not trust it blindly before we move forward with trying something new. That's something that we learned as well on this process. And another thing is to really know that my body needs, and Dom knows that already, but now more than ever, we are really going to feed my body because I can take food, in the off season, much more than most of people that Dom ever worked with. So I tend to be a little bit scared sometimes because I don't want to put a lot of body fat. But you know what? When it comes to make improvements, you have to be okay
Putting a
with
little bit on.
putting a little bit on, and eating big to get big.
Yeah,
Yeah.
essentially.
All right. So that was the recap of my prep, and then now we're gonna move forward into speaking a little bit about everybody's peak week.